What's going on, everyone? This is Noah from Spanky the Sparky. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Aaron, out of UA Local 486 in Baltimore, Maryland. Aaron, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to do the interview. A lot of my content is obviously focused around the electrical trade as an electrician, but as a union member, it's important to encompass all the different organizations, and the Plumbers is obviously a pretty large organization in itself and a very well-paying one. I know here in Columbus they are paid substantially higher than the electricians, so that's also cool. But before we begin, if you want to just give a little bio about yourself, as much or as little as you want to put out there.
Yeah, so I've been in Local 486 for coming on 18 years now.
That's awesome.
And I got in when I was 18, and it's given myself and my family some great opportunities, to move forward in life with.
Yeah.
And great benefits that come along with that, with everything with retirement when it comes to the pension, the annuity, the option to contribute to the 401k.
That's nice.
And now that I have a daughter, family medical, which is very important.
Yeah, that's a very large one. I know every local and every union is going to have a little different parameters for their insurance, but I know ours is very good. I'm sure yours guys is very good as well. But yeah, a lot of people I talk to, especially with children or a spouse, medical is a very large aspect. And with the increase in health insurance over the past even 10 years, I mean, it's a very big burden on a lot of people. So we're very fortunate in that regard.
I agree. And one thing that when I first got into the local, I didn't quite realize how important, medical coverage is. But as you either start to get older or things start to happen to you,
Yep.
unfortunately, or you have a family and you got to take your kids to the doctors, you'll quickly realize how important it is to have, good medical coverage in your household.
That's very true. You started out on the non-union side as a teenager. I think it was 18. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
And then you organized into Local 486 at just 18 years old. What pushed you to make that jump so early?
Well, that is correct. What pushed me to make the jump is I just quickly realized that the money wasn't there on the non-union side of things unless you were the business owner.
That's
And being a business owner is a great opportunity if all the stars align for you in that stake.
Yeah,
But being a business owner isn't for everyone.
that's true.
So my neighbor at the time, he had a Local 26 sticker on his truck, and I started doing some research on Google, and that's when I was able to find Local 46's training facilities website online, which detailed the application process, which I started and then got accepted into.
That's
And
awesome.
that's how I made the transition from the non-union side of things over into Local 46. And, shortly thereafter of getting accepted, my pay and benefits significantly increased, which is what I was after.
Yeah, that's awesome. I started out non-union as well, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, there are some non-union outfits throughout all the different trades that pay well, and that's awesome if that's the case. I know from my perspective, when I was working non-union, that wasn't the case. So, yeah, the pay is a big thing, and like you said, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. I owned two businesses while I was still in school, and it can be very... I can only imagine the toll it takes on one person being on the construction sector side of things, running a business. I'm sure it would be pretty brutal. So, yeah, business isn't for everyone.
Yeah. Just to touch on that real quick, some of my best friends own construction businesses, and they've been able to prosper very well. So I'm not talking down about those opportunities at all.
Yeah.
And you are 100% right. I have a couple of non-union buddies in different sectors of construction that do well. But the point that I just wanted to put on camera about that is the companies, the non-union companies that pay well and have a large benefit package, they're few and far between.
That's
Where
very
once you're getting into a specific local, you're getting that pay package, no matter what company in that local you're working for.
That's very true. That's extremely true. Looking back over the last 18 years in the trade, what stands out the most about growing up in the union versus staying non-union?
Really, I think it's, the first thing that would come to mind would be just the safety on the job site and having a shop stew that you can talk to about, potential issues that will come up on the job site
Very true.
that are safety violations. And then also having the proper tools and having the proper PPE readily available to you to make your job, safer and easier and make you more productive at the end of the day.
I fully agree with that. When I work non-union, obviously what electricians do compared to plumbers, pipe fitters, and so forth, different. But from a safety perspective, I was about a month into my non-union time. They put me in a live panel by myself. It was terrifying. I refused to do the work in there because I didn't feel comfortable, but that would never happen in the IBEW. I never had that happen through my apprenticeship, and I've never saw that happen. If it does happen, obviously there's safeguards in place. And then you mentioned the job site steward, which is a nice added bonus, especially on the larger jobs. So I
Yeah,
think
absolutely, 100%.
Local 486 is a combined local with plumbers, pipe fitters, welders, service techs. How does that setup change the culture and day-to-day work compared to locals that split those trades up?
How does that split that? How does that? So you'll have different contractors, that each have their niches. There's some contractors that are just specializing in service contracts,
Yeah,
and they kind of are doing their own things. And then some of the bigger companies, on the bigger projects, they'll put in a bid to make it a turnkey operation, and they'll get a large, multi-story commercial building, and it'll be turnkey, and they'll be doing the plumbing and the HVAC on the same job for the same company. Obviously, they'll break that down, and you'll have different crews. One crew will be, focused on the plumbing side of things,
yeah,
and then the other crew will be working on the HVAC side of things. So I think to answer your question directly, it kind of just depends on what contractor you're working for, and
that makes sense.
also what contractor you're working for and what type of project you're on.
That makes sense. You've worked in hospital, colleges, and high-end condo projects. What type of job site taught you the most, and why do you think that's the case?
That's a good question. I think every job site has taught me something that I've taken along with me throughout my career. But I
Yeah.
would probably say the number one answer to your question would be hospitals, because there's so much more mechanical systems, and I'm sure in your case, electrical systems.
Yes, there
There's
is.
so many more mechanical and electrical systems in a hospital compared to any other building of its size. So
That's
I would say hospitals, you're probably going to learn and absorb the most at.
I would agree with that. There's at least I can't speak on the plumbing side, but like the electrical side, there's a lot of different systems set up, like backup power and things like that. And then if one side of the hospital goes down with power, the other side will like reactive. It's yeah, very complicated or complex. But I do agree you can learn something on any job site, but complexity wise, I would say hospitals can teach you a very large amount.
Yeah, I know. And to speak on the mechanical side of things, in buildings comparable of the same size, um, the mechanicals of a hospital, there's about 30% more piping in a
Wow.
hospital compared to any other building of its given size. So there's definitely a
Wow.
lot going on
Yeah, that's intense.
behind the walls and above the ceilings of a hospital.
That's intense.
Yeah.
A 5-year apprenticeship with night classes and Saturdays is obviously probably not too enjoyable, although it's necessary at times. What was the hardest part of getting through it, and what paid off the most in the long run for you personally?
I think the hardest part of getting through it was probably getting up after the day after you had school, getting up and going to work and making sure you're there on time. I think
Yeah,
that got to be a little bit tough. But what paid off the most was just, having the whole package come together, and, having the pension credits continuously add up year after year, and pyramid up, and just watching in this beautiful stock market that we're in right now, watching the annuity and the 401k pot continue to grow. So I
yeah,
think really it was just having everything continuously progressing forward that made it all worthwhile.
and that's something I know it's hard, especially when you're younger, to see. I mean, you might have jobs out there that might start you out at even $10 more an hour up front. But what a lot of young people don't realize, and you kind of mentioned it earlier with the health insurance, is you have to also look at the long term. So all these, you might not be paid as much hourly to begin with, but with the benefits package, you're making a lot more money up front indirectly, but especially over the long term between all your retirement accounts, which is a big thing, your health care. I can see why a lot of young people don't see it from that perspective, because I was young once, and obviously I wanted money. I didn't care about anything else, but
Yeah.
it's something that I hope more young people come to realize anyways.
I couldn't agree more. I'm huge on saving and investing, and I try to tell every apprentice, every mechanic that I work alongside, or every foreman that I work underneath, this same topic, because I just read a report on the Washington Post, and the average person in the United States has around $50,000 set aside in their retirement accounts, and we all know how bad inflation is and how expensive life can be once you retire, especially if you have to go into a nursing home and you need,
Yep.
extra help in the assisted living home. That $40,000 or $50,000 isn't going to go far.
No.
And I was just fortunate enough to have coworkers and then friends and family beat it into my head at a very young age that, look, you might not think you need this now, but save and invest everything you can.
Yep.
Which that's where the 401k comes into play, because that's in our local, the 401k is self-contributed.
Yeah.
The contractors pay on our behalf for the pension and for the annuity, but the
Yep.
401k is self-contributed. And that's why I just try to tell everyone, and I hope people out there listening to this podcast, once we put it out there, it'll resonate with them that a little bit each week, a little bit each month adds up over the course of your career.
Yep. Compound interest is
100%.
a wonder of the world that many don't know, but they wish they had when it's too late.
You're 100% right. And then the most people, once they realize what it is and how it works, unfortunately, it's a little too late for it to really do its magic.
Yep, that's very true. And I think that's something that should be taught in schools, in my opinion. I do think all organizations, like in our case, I wish there was more of an emphasis on that, at least starting out. I'm sure every local is a little different with how they're relaying that information, but it's very important. You want to work the here and now, but you also want to set yourself up, not only yourself, but your family up
100%.
for the future. So
100%, man.
You said you genuinely love your job, but you're also looking forward to retirement. I don't blame anyone for that. How important has the pension and annuity, or how was the pension annuity when you, how important was the pension and annuity when you were deciding on a union career?
It was important, but to be completely honest and transparent, I was at such a young age when I got in at 18. I wasn't sure how it worked, and I wasn't sure how it would all add up with pension credits.
Yeah.
And how the money gets contributed into the pot on our behalf from the contractor side. But quickly after getting into the local and talking to some of the older guys at the time, they were able to break it down and teach me pretty quickly. And now it's very important to pay attention to that.
That's very true. I don't know how I keep saying this because every trade's a little different, but I know in my home local, we have a set amount of hours that we have to work every year to hit our full pension credit amount, and then if you work above that set amount of hours, it gets prorated up, which is a nice added bonus in my opinion.
Yeah, not to get too in depth with it, but yeah, we're the same way.
That's awesome.
And you can even and in some locals too, you can even earn 2 credits in a year if you're working a lot of overtime. Those hours are definitely going to be going towards your retirement and pyramiding very quickly.
That's very true. You kind of mentioned this earlier, but you mentioned growing up, your neighbor, I believe, had an IBEW Local 26 sticker on his truck. Growing up now and connecting the dots, how powerful was it seeing someone actually living the lifestyle the union promises?
It was very moving, and it took me. I had to take. It was very moving because I realized that he was living a nice lifestyle, had a nice house, He had some classic cars, and not to name everything, but
Yeah,
he was living a nice lifestyle. And I realized, hey, isn't that the American dream?
that
Isn't
is.
that what we're all after? You wake up every day, you go to work, you give the contractor 8 for 8,
Yep.
put in an honest day's work, and hopefully you can get paid accordingly
Yeah.
to that. And I saw that he was living that lifestyle, and then I realized early on in my career when I was working on union that I was working the same amount of hours, if not more than him, and it just wasn't adding up on my end of the scale.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's when the research went into finding local 486 and the training facility and applying to it.
that's awesome.
So I really say that it's the modern day American dream,
That,
because pensions are a dying thing in our
that
world, in our
that's very true.
country. And pensions are, if you want to say, the backbone of a lot of the union locals across the country. So I
That's
think
true.
it's important to highlight that, we still do have pensions.
We're one of the very few professions out there that have a pension, and I mean, obviously, I keep saying it because it does it. There are like local pensions. There's an international pension, but every local's pension at the local level is funded a little differently. But an overwhelmingly large majority of our pensions are pretty well funded at the moment. That's not to say things could change, because they can always change. But yeah, it's a nice thing to have. And then you mentioned seeing your neighbor live a lifestyle that looked very nice. Seeing is believing, and that's one of the very important. For younger people or parents watching, what do you think they misunderstand most about union trades and the long-term stability of them?
That's a very good question there. I think I think what I would probably hear the most about is layoffs. And, I can only speak for my personal time in the local and in the
Yeah,
trades. And layoffs in 18 years for me have been non-existent. Now, I can't promise that to anyone else that's watching that video, because every local's different.
yeah,
Everyone's going to bring a different level of effort and energy to the job site every day, which, ultimately can impact layoffs.
that's very true.
Obviously, there has to be work in the local too. So there's a lot of factors that go into this. But I think one stereotype that you get in the union is you're always going to be laid off, or there's going to be a lot of layoffs. And I can just say, from my personal situation, in 18 years, it's been a non-existent issue to talk about.
For me, I haven't been in 18 years. I'm a little over 7 years in myself, but I've never experienced a layoff. And like you said, a lot of that varies local to local. Obviously, if there's a lot of work in the area, you're probably not going to get laid off. But even when work does slow down, because it eventually will slow down, a lot of people, I mean, just having a good work ethic, showing up on time, actually working, you'll stay employed. And the nice thing at the end of the day is, if work completely dries up in your area, even though it might not be desirable, you have your golden ticket and you can go travel wherever you see fit. So that's a nice
Yeah.
added bonus.
Yeah, and just one thing I wanted to highlight on this topic before we move on to the next one.
Yeah,
The older guys in my local always taught me, as an early apprentice coming up, your reputation always beats you to the next job site.
that is very
So,
true.
you show up early every day for work, you show up on time for work, and you give the man an honest day's pay, an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, and your reputation is going to beat you to the next job site, and you'll be
Yep.
fine.
Yep, you can spend your whole career doing a great job, and
Yeah.
then one incident can be the it can go really bad or good, go very good or very bad for yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, reputation is all you really have at the end of the day.
Yep.
Right now, Local 486 has a pretty large amount of work, plenty of overtime, and a big data center boom. What's that doing for morale and opportunity inside the local? Obviously, you can't speak for everyone, but more importantly for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good morale right now because work is good. There's plenty of overtime going on. There's a lot of options to work at different job sites throughout our territory.
Yeah.
So, there's times where you'll see guys, just saying, hey, look, they're dragging up from one contractor to go to another one because maybe it's closer to home. There might be more overtime.
Yeah.
I know, there's a number of factors that go into that. But right now, work looks great and the morale is high.
That's awesome. That's what everyone wants. Obviously, it's not always the case, but
Yeah.
that's awesome that it's there. Um,
Yeah.
if you could go back and talk to your 18-year-old self just getting into the union, what advice would you give him about the trade and about the life now, having experienced it over the last 18 years?
It really is just, as I said a few minutes ago, showing up to work early, staying off your phone. If you're an apprentice, you're trying to absorb as much information out of your mechanic as possible.
Yeah.
If you're a mechanic, you're just trying to pay attention to the details and put in a quality product
Yep.
and, bring up potentially helpful ideas to your foreman and just constantly trying to look ahead at the details and potentially find any clashes on the drawings or any clashes on what's going to happen and bring those up in the meetings ahead of time to
Yeah.
try to nip these problems in the butt so you can keep the project going in an effective and efficient manner and minimize delays and hiccups.
That's very true. And that's something I would say that's the most important part of being, not important part of being an apprentice, but something you can control as an apprentice is just staying proactive. If obviously pay attention if there's some downtime. I mean, typically have a tool cart, you can organize that, you can sweep. Just staying proactive as an apprentice will go a lot further than a lot of people will realize.
Yeah, and you always got to stay on your feet when it comes to safety because we can
Yes.
get so complacent going to the same building every day, going into the same floor of the building every day, going to work. But let's just say that the sheet metal crew had a shutdown the night before that you didn't know about.
That's
That
true.
whole area that you've been working in and you think like the back of your hand, it could be completely changed. There could be trash and debris and all thread rod all over the floor. So I think you
That's
can't,
very true.
safety is important and not getting complacent and definitely keeping an eye on obviously your apprentice or your fellow mechanics
Yeah.
in the process of all this too is very important because we're trying to complete these jobs efficiently and on time, but we're also trying to, complete these jobs safely as well.
That's true. I'm a firm believer in the saying complacency kills.
Yeah,
First heard that playing high school football, and it kind of stuck with me. I believe it's very true in anything in life.
absolutely.
Um, and then you kind of, this is just kind of a bonus question because I've taken enough of your time. If say I was a 16-year-old guy walking up to you and I said, Aaron, I know I want to join the plumber's trade. I just don't know if I want to go the union or non-union side, but I'm 100% on becoming a plumber. What would your advice be to them?
It'd be pretty easy if you want to do the same job as me and make a lot less money. Go non-union. If you want to do the same job as me and make the same package as me and have the benefits package that I have, come join the union and give it a shot and see what it's about. And I'm pretty confident to say that I think that you'll stick around on the union side of things.
I would give pretty much the same advice on the electrical side of things. And obviously it's a lot different from someone like you that has worked both sides. A lot of people have only worked on the union side or the non-union side. They don't have both perspectives. So
Yeah, I always find it funny when I start to hear people talk about one side or the other, and I'm like, well, have you worked both sides to actively compare them? And most people haven't.
nope.
Because I try to tell, guys around me all the time that, look, there's some non-union guys out there that are slick with it.
Yes, they
They're
are.
nice with it. You can't sit here and say that all of them are, garbage. Because I'll be honest, that's not the case. We got to stay on our toes being in the union
Yeah.
because we're demanding higher benefit packages and higher money. So, we got to stay on our toes and continue the training to make sure that we keep that high level of work,
I fully
that
agree.
high quality of work and that experience and the education. We have to continuously make ourselves better.
Yes, we do.
But one thing that I wanted to touch on, we were talking about like the high school demographic,
Yeah.
whether it's a 17 or 18-year-old. And I wanted to say this. I think college is a great thing. It opens a lot of doors for a lot of people. But 40 years ago, when you had a bachelor's degree and you went into a Fortune 500 company for an interview, 40 years ago, if you had a bachelor's degree, you stood out as something special.
That
And
is
more
true.
than likely, you were going to get that job.
Yep.
Now, they're forcing college down everyone's throat in high school. So everyone and their brother has a bachelor's degree. You're going to need a master's degree or a PhD or doctorate to stand out now. Which obviously costs. Just getting a bachelor's costs a lot of money, but
Yes, it
going up to
does.
those couple of tiers that I just mentioned, it's significantly even more money. So where I'm going with all this is it just the trades aren't going anywhere. We're going to
No.
continuously need sheet metal workers. We're going to need union laborers. We're going to need pipe fitters. We're going to need welders. We're going to need electricians. We're going to need service techs to start up this equipment and keep it running. Everything mechanical over time breaks down, and you
Yep.
need someone that can work on it and fix it and keep it going. So with that being said, I think that there's a lot of opportunities in all the given trade unions for the young and upcoming generation in our country right now. And I know AI is the big topic right now of a lot of things, but they can automate a lot of things in life. But a lot of what we're talking about right now in this conversation piece, you can't automate that.
That's very true. And I want to touch on what you just said about college. Like you said, I do think the college degree, or a lot of college degrees, obviously, if you're going in the medical field, maybe lawyers, and there's a few other professions that I definitely think a degree is needed. A lot of them I don't think are needed. But myself, I actually went to college. I got a bachelor's degree, and it was kind of a blessing in disguise. I couldn't find a job out of college. I ended up going through a temp agency. That's how I ended up with my non-union electrical job. And then shortly after, that's when I made the transition into the union. So if you have the degree, it doesn't mean you're getting a job, and you can have the master's degrees. I know people that have master's degrees that can't find jobs, or
Yeah.
they're taking very basic entry-level jobs. And I know one individual that has a PhD. Obviously, it's going to vary depending on what your field of study was, but they also are having a very difficult time finding a job. So it's interesting. College is pushed down our throats. There's no guarantee.
Yeah.
And yeah, the
It
tr-
costs, and again, I want to say this first and foremost: college is a great thing, but there is no guarantee, and it
nope,
takes a lot of money to cross that finish line and get that piece of paper in your hands.
that is very
When
true.
you can get paid to learn on the job, and most of these locals that we're talking about, as soon as you hit the ground running, you're getting paid. You're getting paid while you're going to school, and then obviously you're gonna get raises along the way. And when you turn out of your time, you'll get and you graduate, you'll get a nice raise there. So that's something to keep in mind.
And the other thing, I was talking with, I believe, I forget which interview it was, but we were talking, and it was kind of like a young person might feel like they're missing out on the college experience. But if you start in the trade at a young age, maybe you work a year or two, and you're like, you know what, this really isn't for me. Hopefully, in that time frame, you've saved a little money, and then you can go to college, and hopefully, you find what your calling is there. So,
Yeah. And at that point, I always recommend, just finishing out the apprenticeship, because no one can ever take that license away from you. No one can ever take that experience away from you. You can go anywhere in the country and work. And
yep,
then if you decide at that point in time, you take a deep breath and you decide that this isn't for you, well, then, go and, try to be an entrepreneur, start a business up, maybe go to college.
yeah,
But yeah, once you have that license and you finish you finish your program up, there's that paperwork stays with you. It's yours.
that's very true.
On the non-union side versus the union side, I see this a lot, especially right now. We have, we're organizing a lot of members, so you're starting to, meet new people and hear their stories.
Yeah,
So I wanted to see if we could somehow incorporate this into the tail end of this
yeah,
interview, and what that point is specifically. If you're in the non-union side of things and you're not getting along with your boss, you really have no choice but to take it or quit.
that's very
And
true.
then once you quit and you go to another non-union shop, you're gonna lose a couple bucks an hour most likely.
Yep,
They're gonna say, "Well, I really don't need guys right now, but I'll take you on in a trial period. I'll pay you $5 less. Give it a year or two, and I'll get you back to where you're at." Right? Is the story that I keep continuously hearing. if that same scenario happens in the local, and you decide you want to find a job closer to home, or it's not working out on the specific job site that you're on, and you quit, the next project that you go to in your local, you're making the exact same
Same.
amount that you were making the week prior, and you don't have to worry about trying to renegotiate your
Yep.
contract
Yep.
with the new employer, because it's a union negotiated contract for everybody.
That's very true. Once, like obvious, I'm assuming you're talking about at the journeyman level, but even as
Yes.
an apprentice, if you're laid off for whatever reason, end up with a new contractor, you're still making that set rate, and then, yeah,
Yeah.
if you get mad or whatever the case may be, maybe
Yep.
there's just more overtime somewhere else that you want to go to. You're getting still paid that same exact pay rate, and then there might be incentive pay or whatever the case may be. So that, yeah, you're very right about that. Something I hadn't really thought about, but you're very spot on with that.
Yeah, I'm seeing that a lot right now. Guys are saying they would quit one company and go to the next on the non-union side, and they were going backwards in their pay, and they would just dangle that the owners would just dangle that carrot in front of the guys, and you don't have to worry about that on the union side of things.